San Francisco's dirty streets, so dirty, are hurting international tourism as conventions struggle to come back. During the pandemic, everything was shut down. Nobody's going anywhere. Nobody's flying anywhere. We've kind of slowly opened up, and now people are back to work. That whole work from home, not so much. Tourism in a city like San Francisco and a city like Portland. Talked about this a bunch. Tough sell. Hey, come to our city, spend your thousands of dollars. Never mind, just disregard the open air drug bazaar, as you walk out 10 feet from your hotel in, a major tourism center like San Francisco. That's what we're talking about today. Let's jump in. Let's check out what is going on. A lot of visitors are concerned for their own safety, travel experts say. They don't know where to walk. We're specifically talking about international tourism here because San Francisco used to be number one, numero uno. Where do you think it is now on the top 10 list? You got it. It's not on the top 10 list. That whole thing about, hey, you recommended that our company do our annual convention in your convention center in San Francisco, and one of our people got assaulted. People felt threatened. They didn't really know where to walk on the sidewalk because it's covered in tents. It's covered in human feces and urine. It's covered in people shooting up drugs. They just didn't really feel comfortable. That's not how you sell tourism in a city like San Francisco, is it? Where international business is such a big deal. This is one of those stories where, we talk about the impact of these policies and how all of these things work together. And, convention centers are a massive part of tourism dollars being spent, especially in a city like San Francisco that's an international destination. A grim outlook for the future of San Francisco's economic recovery as the city struggles to compete for tourists abroad. San Francisco used to be one of the most iconic tourism spots in the world, but today the city is struggling to keep international tourism alive. San Francisco is a cool city to go to if you can get past, hey, where do I walk on the sidewalk? That whole, dodge the human fecal matter type thing. San Francisco's always had its elements of grittiness, right? Talk about watching the streets of San Francisco when I was a kid. It's one of those shows that was, it was already old by the time I watched it as a kid. And I'm like, oh, look at all those old cars. This is kind of cool. Oh, look at San Francisco. So it always had that edge to it. Portland has too, to a certain extent, but Portland's just always kind of funkier, right? And there's a lot of other cities that have had major changes. But I think San Francisco, I haven't been there in years. Need to go down there. I need to go to a lot of these cities and just walk around and try and not get killed. Where do I walk? Where do I go? What do I do? One of those type deals. Stay in that convention center, right? Yeah. Convention clients are weighing their options, safety and cost. And San Francisco isn't offering an optimistic picture of either of those these days. San Francisco is expensive. It's always been expensive, right? Housing in San Francisco. Here in Seattle, we kind of always watch what's going on in LA. We watch what's going on in San Francisco. We watch what's going on in Vancouver, BC, because whatever happens in those cities, that kind of becomes Seattle after a while. San Francisco and all of its townhomes just packed in, 0 lot line, single family residential townhomes, multi-level, just one room wide homes. It's a thing, and they're super expensive. Seattle's caught up, but nowhere near still where San Francisco is. See, it's super expensive on top of the fact it's not safe and it's dirty. A lot of these areas are dirty. Now, you do have areas that are, amazing. And, there's nowhere else in the world like San Francisco, right? But if you're coming from halfway around the world, if you're coming from China, if you're coming from wherever, and your company is spending a lot of money to bring you there, and you're one of those people that are, I want to say convention center directors or in charge of conventions for big companies, You got to go to these cities and check them out to make sure, hey, this is going to work out for our crew. And I don't think anybody right now is saying, oh, yeah, San Francisco, let's go there. I mean, it's mostly good. I think the fact that, San Francisco's got such an international pull, and it always has, is still bringing people in. And that's why tourism isn't decimated, because there's so much to see there. But for a lot of people, I think they'd be fearful of coming into what is basically a third world country, like the Tenderloin in San Francisco. I was reading statistics about the number of police officers that San Francisco is down. And one of the reasons that their police staffing is so bad is that the Tenderloin requires so many police officers. Just the resources go there. Triage, dictates, all right, they're bleeding out in the Tenderloin. Let's go there. Let's do our policing there, because you have to, because that's where the calls are, right? And so other areas of the city, yeah, your car got stolen. We'll get to you when we can. That's, literally what they've got going on. And San Francisco, I'm going to be doing a podcast on it, watch for it shortly, is way down on cops and could be at historically low levels here very shortly as police officers retire and make lateral moves out of these cities and quit. Hey, you crapped on policing as an occupation. I don't really want to do this. It's not worth me getting killed, because the folks that are walking the streets, I mean, these officers take their lives in their own hands every single day, especially in these cities where politicians have just kind of basically let the animals out of the cage, literally dump them out of the prisons, dump them out of the mental institutions, and they're just roaming around. Well, police will get them. Police will clean them up. Well, this is one of those things, international tourism for San Francisco, where you can't really clean it up because the impact is happening. It has happened. It's happened. Just blocks from the city's convention mecca, the Moscone Center, people are seen shooting up in broad daylight with homeless tents and trash crowding the sidewalks, as is standard. One of the things I think people are like, it's, in Portland, they're like, Portland's funky. Portland's, keep Portland weird. Portlandia. That only goes so far. And I'm hearing a lot of rumblings of, you know what? Maybe we should elect some politicians that have a little bit harder stance on crime. Maybe our public safety, maybe we haven't really approached that correctly. You're starting to hear those rumblings. Will you see it in these midterm elections? I don't know. I think it's going to take a bunch more of this kind of stuff for people to recognize, oh, yeah, maybe those policies where we just kind of let everybody do what they want, maybe those aren't working. I don't know why not, but we know why not, because they're not working. They're not working. Crime is up. Homicide is up. Drug usage, drug overdoses, up. So in the convention center area, by the center, Moscone Center, you got people shooting up within a couple of blocks. So, come spend your international tourism dollars, have your big famous international company come to San Francisco, but don't leave your hotel. We don't recommend sightseeing. Well, not so much. And if you do, and you're leaving it in a bus, just don't look out the window, because that whole third world look on the sidewalk, we're not very proud of it, but, keep coming to San Francisco. It'll be okay. Hypodermic needles. I mean, that's mainly for, people with diabetes. How else do you spin that? You don't. And that is why San Francisco is struggling. Or in some cases, clients are concerned about potential harassment. I don't understand that. What do you mean? On Tuesday afternoon, for example, a man ran up to our unmarked ABC7 news car and threatened to punch out our window as he saw us driving by with a GoPro. I took a hard look at a homeless encampment really close to where I spent a lot of time over in Seattle. One of the residents there gave me a real look, like, why are you staring at this section of a public street where we happen to have our tents? Why are you staring? And I'm like, because you're living illegally on a city street and I can stare at you if I want. Now, the flip side of that is they want to hurl something at me. They can. And what are the police going to do? Not much, right? So you're at your own risk. So this person probably had a GoPro on the inside. I've got really tinted windows. Yeah. So they can't really see the GoPro. And by the time they do, you're gone. So there's a lot of that. People want me to just walk up and talk to all these nut jobs. I like living, right? So I want to stay aboard. And for those of you that keep reaching out to me and saying, hey, you need to move out of Seattle, it's not safe, I appreciate your concern. And I am consistently pretty safe, and I usually bring somebody else with me. There seems to be a lot of concern that I get stabbed. I don't want to get stabbed either. I mean, that just doesn't sound like a solid, like, Thursday afternoon, does it? No, I don't want to. This isn't worth it, but we got to get the coverage. So, this ABC7 news crew, they're concerned. And most of these people are just, the homeless people are just, they're nutso, literally. We have to be honest. We have to tell the truth about what to expect in San Francisco, said 𝐍𝐞𝐰𝐬, the president and CEO of San Francisco Travel. That has got to be a tough gig at the moment. All right, we got to be honest and transparent with you. You're going to see a lot of drugs. You're going to see a lot of homelessness. You're going to see a lot of tents. You're going to see a lot of poop. You're going to see police cars going up and down the road. You're going to see some prostitution. You're going to see some crazy stuff. You're going to see some people running around without their pants on. But besides that, come to San Francisco and spend your international tourism dollars. It's really good here. It's mostly solid. Yeah. Anyone who is planning a convention is going to see for themselves. Oh, what's that? Oh, I thought we were in San Francisco and not a third world country. What happened? Yeah, there's that going on, right? A lot of these towns, a lot of these cities. Had many conversations back and forth with a number of you talking about how this type of thing is major impact from the policies of just letting people live wherever they want in their tent and shoot up drugs and have this crime just, go completely, unchecked. Tourism, specifically convention tourism, comes to a grinding halt. And that's essentially what's happened. It hasn't come to a grinding halt in San Francisco, but it's been impacted in a major, major way that we're going to see in here in just a second. So anybody who's planning a convention is going to see for themselves. That's right. They are. They're going to be walking around unless they're told, yes, just stay in your hotel. And, don't go on ground level, because sometimes they scooch past the front door guy and they get inside, and just stay up on your 14th floor and don't look out the window down at the ground below. Just watch HBO. It's all good. It's all good. D'Alessandro and his team have talked with more than 2,000 meeting planners this year who schedule conventions in San Francisco. I wonder how those talks went, because he's saying, you got to be honest, because they're going to come here and see. It's not like you can hide it. You just can't hide it. I remember watching the video of a guy, I think he was a recovered drug addict, and he was trying to get the word out about what the children getting off of public buses going to their school have to deal with on dodge the human fecal matter on the sidewalks, dodge the drug addicts, dodge the crazy crime going on the sidewalks, just to get from the bus to school. I did that podcast, and the footage was like, could you imagine taking that first step off the bus and, oh yeah, over there's a dude shooting up. There's a guy over there nodding up. All right. There's somebody buying drugs. I mean, school's hard enough. Elementary or middle school, high school, hard enough, especially for the little kids. Get off the bus and somebody's like literally shooting up right there. Talk about having a skewed version of reality, right? But that is their reality. And what international travel is saying is, yeah, this isn't our reality. We're not going to pay for that reality. Therefore, San Francisco, 2 thumbs down, not coming to you. So a lot of visitors are concerned for their own safety. They don't know where to walk. All right, where do we go? In our hometown, you can walk down the sidewalks, but here, where do we go? That's a real concern. Can you imagine? And those are third world conditions. Where do we walk? All right, but there's cars out in the street, sidewalks filled, all those people. Oh, what are they doing? They're going to feel threatened, because those people doing drugs, doing whatnot on the sidewalks, they could give a crap if you're from China here on convention. Your company brought you here. They couldn't care less. Clients have seen firsthand what they describe as the dirty streets of San Francisco. How about that show? Dirty Streets of San Francisco. Scenes like open-air drug markets crowding the sidewalks and needles lining the streets nearby the convention space. Don't worry, mostly for diabetes. No, right? I mean, it's just insane, isn't it? One man threw a water bottle at our car as we drove by 8th and Mission Tuesday. Not shocking, better than a rock. Got a rock epidemic throwing going on here in Issaquah and down in Portland. Dudes just throwing rocks at cars on major streets or riding a bike by, hurling a car at somebody's windshield. Those are legit stories going on. You got people that are just whacked out of their mind. And I think the media has become more and more aware of these stories, and we're covering them a little bit more. It's like, okay, we know this is going on. We can't really hide this anymore. And the citizens are actually being impacted. So it's funny to watch like networks that normally wouldn't cover this stuff. Like, oh yeah, that's concerning. Oh, that's problematic. What can we do about this problem? And then they go into that whole thing. It's like, what type of things do we need to do to make our public safety a greater priority to the general personhood living in our town? How about you get some more cops? How about you throw the bad guys in jail, and those who are crazy, put them where they need to be? And the other people that are living in the streets, yeah, you need to sweep them off. Here's your option. You go into treatment, get squared away, can't live here. That's how other cities do it. Yeah, but the cat is so far out of the bag, especially for San Francisco, especially for like the Tenderloin, that I was watching a Tenderloin video. Was it Tenderloin or was it Skid Row? I think it was Skid Row with Mark Leda from Soft White Underbelly. Man, some of the footage from there is just trippy. I mean, just what are you even? It's like a different country. Right? Because there's different rules. There's different people running the streets. It's these daily interactions and problems plaguing the city that's caused former clients to turn to other cities like Austin, Chicago, and Boston. Okay? Because even though all three of those cities have their own issues, they're not, especially Chicago, they're not nearly as bad as San Francisco. And where their tourism center is, where their convention center is, not nearly as bad. So you're like, okay, let's go to Austin, which has an enormous homelessness issue, right? But, downtown, those areas, and kind of like Seattle, some of that's been cleaned up. I don't know the convention center in Seattle as well. It's kind of a little bit of a different area. It's right off the freeway. I haven't been there for a little bit, for a split second, but our mayor's cleaned up downtown Seattle. And a lot of that has been because he understands, tourism dollars, tax revenue. There's that whole thing. So that is one of the underlying things also. When you'd have a lack of tourism coming in, lack of tourists spending money, what happens to those tax dollars? Not there. Then your tax base starts to erode. That's what we're going to see heavy in these cities. Portland being one of them that I, talk about changing the name of this podcast to Dunk on Portland, because we seem to be covering it so often. But right now I also seem to be on a run with San Francisco. There's a lot of stories coming out and they have similarities, similar leadership, liberal policies that have allowed things to go. And people are looking in going, maybe we need to elect somebody that, I don't know, might be I hate to say it, but they might be a little tougher on crime. I think people are thinking that. They're at that point where they're not going to probably vote in the midterm elections. I don't think. Maybe they will. Maybe they're pissed off enough. But I'm talking people that lean a little bit further left. How many stories do we have to have where average citizens are being impacted in their daily lives because of this type of policy? Because you got nut jobs running around everywhere. Yeah. At some point in time, the citizenship goes, okay, all right. Even though, we're really liberal and we're really progressive, the progress in our city isn't really meeting our needs. At some point in time, that hammer has to drop. I don't think we're there yet, but we're at that point where we're like, we're considering it. We're reimagining. And by we, I mean the people that have been like, there's nothing wrong here. There's nothing going on here. And I think you will have some major, major public safety events. And, the emperor has no clothes is going to be the story. It's like, that whole issue of public safety that we just ignored for so long. Yeah, maybe we do need more police officers. Maybe we do actually need to put more people in jail. Maybe we do need a policy on just not allowing homelessness to run rampant wherever. Maybe we do need prosecutors and judges that put people in jail. Yeah, problematic, because we felt like, we were on the right road there, but somewhere we veered off. I don't know how you ever think this, no bail policy, how that's going to be positive. Letting people out of jail for just doing crazy stuff, second-degree homicide. It's okay. Come back to trial. We'll be good. Most every customer that we talk to, most every meeting planner that we talk to talks to us about these situations and the challenges we have. 𝐑𝐞𝐸 said, when they make that final decision, those factors all come down into the decision. And that's what we've been talking about on this podcast on News for Reasonable People since, it was Seattle Real Estate Podcast. Hey, why are you talking about crime on a real estate podcast? Well, it's what we're doing. So tourism, specifically international tourism to San Francisco, one of those things that is a direct correlation. Tourism. Nobody wants to come to see a third world country in the United States in what should be an amazing town to run around in. In 2019, this is where we start to get into some of the stats here. In 2019, the city hosted 40 large-scale conventions at the Moscone Center. This year, they may reach half of that. Half. One of the big conventions in the schedule is Salesforce Dreamforce, which opens next week. But it's not the local conventions 𝐑𝐸𝐸 is concerned about. It's the international clients that are hesitating. One of the things they're looking at is the conditions on the street, he said. We need to be able to walk down the street and not feel harassed. That is true. That is a base requirement, right? What's the harassment level in your town, near the convention center? 1 to 10, is it a 7? Because if it's anything over a 4, we're going to have to reimagine and rethink that. I think you got to have no harassment, but this has been going on for a while. So now I think people basically got wind of it and they understand, okay, yeah, we need to make this a good experience for our people coming to conventions. And if we can't, we're not coming to your city. That's the basic cause and effect. To put it in perspective, a quarter of all tourists visiting San Francisco in 2019 were international travelers. A quarter, 25%. But more importantly, that group made up 63% of all tourism spending. Way over half of the spending tourist dollars international. The largest percentage of any major city in the country, according to San Francisco Travel, most of that spending was attributed to China, which was the city's #1 international market pre-pandemic. Now, San Francisco, where do you think it is on the top 10? It's not. It's not even in the top 10. It has dropped off. It's just, what's happening? We're in a free fall. Yeah, you are, because you can't really control your own streets. One number that will not be what our numbers will not be what they were in 2019 until we see those markets return. And people running conventions aren't going to go back until they're convinced changes have been made. And I don't know how you're going to do that. I don't know what you're going to do, because all the dynamics going into this point to things getting worse. Make that vote count, right? It's really imperative that San Francisco is a safe destination. Otherwise, the city is going to risk losing a lot. The city has already lost a lot. They have lost, probably hundreds of millions of tax dollars, tax revenue coming in from tourism, revenue coming in from China. I mean, at some point in time, it's going to get back to people in all these various places coming from all over the world. Yeah, San Francisco, I probably wouldn't plan a major convention there in their convention. That's a little bit sketchy. And that's what these cities, their downtowns are designed for. That is what they are there for. Tourism. Hey, bring in the tourist dollars. It's what makes a city go. And so for San Francisco, along with like Portland, and I know Seattle has struggled with it. I've had talks with many of you about, Seattle and Portland are a no-go because of this, and this. The same exact things that we're talking about here with San Francisco. You can't bring people in and have them feel threatened. You can't bring people in and have them go, I don't know how to get around here. Speak another language, looking out the window. Somebody's banging on the window that's just some, crazed drug addict. I released a short on YouTube the other day, just a real quick video. I think it was 45 seconds. It was footage of somebody in a Seahawks jersey right by the Seahawks stadium that was on the hood of the car. They had broken off an antenna from somebody else's car. They're, reaching around on this car, and somebody from the inside's, shooting this footage. And this person is just literally all over and just lurching about. I mean, they look like, a wounded duck or, a fish flopping around. This person's just on drugs. Do you want to have that kind of, look to your city? Because, in the comments of that little short, people are like, yeah, I used to work in that building over there, and this is standard procedure for that area. Okay, it's standard procedure. If you work there, this is the drill. If you're flying in from halfway around the world and you come in and you're expecting this great San Francisco tourist experience, this great convention you're going to go to with the rest of your company, and you have that instead, maybe you get assaulted, maybe you get a water bottle thrown at your car and like, oh, yeah. It's a no-go for tourism, isn't it? Just a hard no-go. So this isn't that hard to figure out, but how's it going to get resolved? How's it going to get resolved? Yeah, you're going to have to bring in some different leadership, right? Now, I don't see that happening in San Francisco, although they did boot out 𝐏𝐞𝐤𝐬 Boudin, right? Got him out of there. Couldn't seem to get the governor out. Couldn't get the, mayor of LA. Couldn't get him out because you've still got people who believe this policy, this is the way to go. This is, this is our new deal. This is our new green thing. This is great. It's awesome. Just don't go outside. Don't go on the sidewalk. Play that dodge the human fecal matter on the sidewalk. Yeah. So, the numbers don't lie. That's the bottom line. You can't avoid that. What happened to, San Francisco's tourism? Well, you been on the sidewalk lately? Not good. All right. That's it for me on this one. Thanks so much for being here. I will catch up with you on the next one. Bye for now.